Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have with us Congressman Hank Johnson, a Democrat representing the 4th District in Georgia, serves on the Judiciary Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Representative Johnson, nice to see you, my friend. How are you?
Um, if I were to say I'm doing okay, I would be lying, Dean, because even though, on the surface, everything is fine with me and my family, this nation is burning. Our democracy is crumbling, and it worries me. It aggravates me. It's unsettling. It's quite serious. It's more serious than it has ever been. The threat to our democracy and our liberty and freedom. And I'm just really, really concerned. But other than that, I'm okay. How about you?
I think I'm in the same place as you. I keep smiling as I update my passport and stuff. I'm like, I gotta have a plan B here, but we're gonna keep fighting right to the end. That's all I know. So, Congressman, there's a lot of it's not like normal conversations about politics right now. We're having conversations about existential threats to our republic and our freedoms, our democracy. And some of it we know is Trump trolling or just getting press, but some of it, there's a pattern that's very, very real. But one thing I want to touch on, and Elon Musk, who is Donald Trump's top donor, that's all he is. He has no official position in the government, is at the Pentagon today getting a briefing on China. And to give people a little background, Elon Musk's biggest factory is in China. He got banks from banks in China that are tied to the government. Rosa DeLauro, a colleague of yours, said in the past Elon Musk's extensive investments in China and personal ties to the Chinese Communist Party call into question at a time that was Elon Musk opposing the budget deal in December. Congressman Govern in the past also raised questions. Even Steve Bannon has said that Elon Musk's paymaster is in Beijing. And so why would Elon Musk, can you help us make sense, get a briefing by Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, about China in the Pentagon?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out, Dean, and the only thing I can come up with is we've got a guy, Pete Hegseth, at the Department of Defense, who is trying to ingratiate himself with Elon Musk by showing him how powerful he is. And so he invites him over to give him a top secret briefing on U.S. defense plans as as relates to China. I mean, it could be something just as base as Pete Hegseth trying to score political points with Elon Musk. But whatever the reason might be for him to get a briefing at the Pentagon, a security briefing, I can't understand why that would be necessary for a non-elected official who runs an unofficial organization that's cutting our democracy. I don't know why he would need a classified briefing on the nation's top secrets. It is damaging when you reveal that kind of information to a guy like Elon Musk, who hasn't even been through a rigorous security screening process. He's just up there. He's just a guy from South Africa who is now calling the shots and threatening Pentagon employees that if they're the ones who leak the information, I'm going to see to it that you go to jail. So, I mean, fear and intimidation, it's, I mean, the ways that our democracy and the people of this country are being attacked, it's just mind boggling.
I agree. And, when in a way you touched on, you made me think of the veterans that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are hurting right now. In the Republican bill that became law, they cut $800 billion in funding for VA facilities. They're bragging about getting rid of 80,000 employees at the VA. They've laid off thousands of VA workers and veterans who work in our government right now. I've never seen, and I don't mean to be like the mirror of Fox News by saying this, but more of an anti-veteran administration ever. Usually we take care of our veterans. And I'm not sure if it's Elon Musk or Donald Trump who has a lot of animus to our veterans, but that's what it seems like to me. But they're suffering. What's your reaction?
well, actually cut $23 billion from veterans benefits. I mean, for for the remainder of this year, for the next, until the end of the fiscal year, September 30th. So $23 billion in veterans benefits being cut, taking money away from veterans who have given their lives, given their all to this country. And at the same time, Dean, yesterday was the 53rd anniversary of the uh, Older Americans Act
Hmm.
nutrition program. Yesterday, 53rd anniversary. So I visited a, a food, a Meals on Wheels facility that prepares meals for seniors. A lot of those seniors are needy veterans, veterans who can't afford to eat. And so they are served by Meals on Wheels. And it's so disconcerting to know that the Trump administration has been cutting into that program. I mean, withdrawing $500 million in emergency food assistance dollars. They're talking about cutting the SNAP program, where a lot of children and disabled, including veterans, people get their sustenance from. And and Trump is cutting that. Elon Musk is cutting that all so that they can readjust the money towards giving it to wealthy billionaires like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and their buddies, another tax break that they don't even need. And so, while they are destroying our democracy, while they are destroying our freedom and liberty under that democracy, they're also taking away food from the mouths of needy people and putting it into the hands of greedy people.
Absolutely. I'm chatting with Congressman Hank Johnson. So let's talk a little bit, because we'll talk about Department of Education in a second, but let's talk about the threat to democracy. We have Donald Trump again yesterday in person and online and through days now, attacking the judiciary, attacking judges who dare try to apply the law. We had the Attorney General Pam Bondi saying the judge has no right to interpret the Alien Enemies Act. How dare this judge? And you really understand, it really gets sense. They're rejecting the idea of equal branches of government. They want a king. And it really seems like they're not hiding that at all. What's your reaction to what we're seeing?
Well, they have done their best to disrupt and damage the delicate system of checks and balances upon which our government operates. The legislative branch making the laws, the executive branch enforcing the laws, and the judicial branch determining whether or not laws and actions are constitutional or unconstitutional. And that delicate system has existed to protect rights and liberties under the Constitution with three co-equal branches of government for the last 250 years. Now we have a situation where we have a bull in the china shop who is wrecking that delicate system of checks and balances by assuming all power, excuse me, into and unto himself. And unfortunately, that quest was aided by the United States Supreme Court when it issued its ruling that granted presidents immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts. That pretty much gave Donald Trump the green light to do what he's doing now. And so now we're dependent on that same court to hold him in check. And I'm hopeful that the court will do that. But the problem now is that if Trump decides to disobey, as he has repeatedly, court orders, lower court orders, if he chooses to violate and disregard a United States Supreme Court order, then our democracy will be broken. And it is in his hands now, whether or not that happens or not. And so, we're very close in terms of a case getting to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court could rule against Trump, and then Trump will have that ultimate decision to make whether or not to abide by that court order or to disregard it. And if he does that, then, as I say, democracy is officially broken at that point.
Do you get the sense that with Trump's continued attacks on the judiciary as well as members of Congress, and I have to be honest, it reminds me after the 2020 election, when they were all out there saying the election was fraud and they were conditioning their base and even arguably radicalizing parts of their base, that to prepare them, if Trump says, well, I can't follow these orders because these judges are illegal and I was elected and they weren't, and they're standing in the way of you. Are you fearful he's preparing his base to support him if he says, I'm not going to follow any court orders I don't agree with?
Well, there's no doubt he's preparing his base, and he's even frightened members of the House and Senate, elected officials, to support him. He's got Pam Bondi, who is a lawyer, who understands the system of checks and balances that makes this country's democracy work. She understands that, but yet she has discarded her legal training and her fidelity to the Constitution to support the dictator approach to running government. Senators and Congress people, senators and House members in the MAGA Republican Congress are poised to do the same thing. And it's very disconcerting how we could get to this point where we have a cult leader who is the president of our country, and millions upon millions of people and their leaders are willing to drink his Kool-Aid like they did with Jim Jones in Guyana, with the same effect, Dean. The same effect will be on our democracy and on our freedom. It'll die. The people won't let it happen, though, Dean.
Right.
The people of this country will rise up and not allow a dictator to take away their rights and their freedoms. And so I hold abundant optimism about our future. We'll get through this, but it's going to take the people to make it happen. We won't be able to depend on the courts or the legislators. And certainly the president is the one that we have to confront at this time and have to stop. So it'll be we the people.
Yes, it will be. And look, we are seeing we the people, numerous people showing up at Republican House members' town halls, very fired up, upset about Elon Musk, about losing their job. Some of them who had federal jobs or family members losing their jobs, and fearful, and rightfully so, that Republicans are going to gut Medicaid and they're coming for Social Security. It's a question if they can just purge people without an act of Congress, which I think they'll do. Do you think there's a chance the reaction we're seeing in the town halls will impact their conduct in the House, the way they vote?
Yeah, it's no question that the same people who voted Trump in are now disappointed, dismayed, angry, and confused about what is happening. And they're showing up at those town hall meetings for Republicans who are courageous enough to host them. And they are letting their angst be known. And eventually, that could cause some Congress people to flow with the people as opposed to flowing with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and their billionaire cronies. And so, while they are stooges for this president and his administration now, that doesn't mean that they will continue to be that way. And that's why it's so important for the people to get out and let their representatives know what's on their minds.
The last two nights I had the two Democratic candidates running in the special elections in Florida, Josh Wheel and Gabe Alamont. and they're open seats April 1st. And they both, independently of each other, said the same thing. They're having veterans come to their events who are definitely Republicans, outraged with what's going on, and that everyone there is talking about the economy, and it's not getting the headlines yet that the economy is really slowing. They're really fearing it. They're fearful of what the future is going to bring. And people are citing Trump's tariffs as a tax. They get it, including Republicans. So I'm hoping April 1st, we might see shocking the world if one of these two seats go blue, or at least really close the gap, because that's where the energy is. People are upset. And they told me they're in Republican districts. They understand it's an uphill battle. They said they're amazed how many Republicans are coming to their events complaining about Trump and Musk.
Yeah, and so what the representatives and senators who are hosting these meetings, the Republicans, are saying about the people showing up at their meetings are that they are kind of like the Tea Party.
Right.
They're corporate driven. Somebody's putting money into their pockets to get them to come to these meetings. But unlike the Tea Party movement, which was corporate driven and not organic, these are organic movements of people who are moving on their own. They're organizing locally. They're coming together when they have an opportunity to do so. And they are voicing their displeasure with what Donald Trump is doing. These are the people who supported him. So,
Right.
When these representatives and senators figure that out, um, there are going to be some changes. And meanwhile, the economic pain that comes from high prices, unemployment, and an economy in free fall heading towards a recession. I mean, when people are feeling that economic pain, and when the U.S. senators and U.S. congresspeople on the Republican side realize that the people are pointing fingers at Donald Trump for causing that pain, then they are going to wake up and start doing the right thing. I mean, we were left with the greatest economic recovery and an economy that was humming along the best in the industrialized world when Joe Biden left office. And within just less than 3 months, we are now headed towards a recession with unemployment going up, inflation going up, and
Yep.
it's just
Consumer confidence coming down.
consumer confidence going down. It's just the whole nine. In addition to our democracy being under threat of imminent demise. So it's a tough time for these Republicans, tough environment for them.
And last two things, and I'm talking about Congressman Hank Johnson. Yesterday, Donald Trump signs an executive order trying to put in to action his dream and the dream of the right for a long time, getting rid of the Department of Education, which was enacted 40 years ago under President Jimmy Carter. If they're successful, I know Congress has to act in certain ways, but if they're able to strangle the assets of it and are successful in killing the Department of Education, what can you share about what the real world impact would be?
Well, I mean, when you think about Pell Grants, student aid that allows people who can't afford it to get to college, those are not just Black students and Latino students who get those grants. Those are white students and from white families across middle America who get those Pell Grants. And one of the things that the Department of Education does is manages that Pell Grant program. And so when you start cutting their employees and their ability to actually manage the program and get the money out of the door, or to see that the money gets into the hands of the recipients or into the schools that they're going to, when that process is hampered, people suffer. They're not able to go to college or trade school.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, all of the people whose children are developmental delayed or physically or mentally handicapped and they're in public schools, those kids, their parents pay tax dollars. They deserve public education. And it's the Department of Education that ensures that those students have the same civil rights as other students, and they are appropriately educated. So that is managed by the Department of Education. Federal money that goes to the states for the purpose of education, supporting education, that is hampered. The ability to take or collect data to determine where things are working and where they're not, and to take action thereafter, appropriate action, that's threatened. So support for public education on the local and state level is what the Department of Education does. And without the Department of Education, there will be no coordination, there'll be less money, there will be less knowledge about how things are going, and there'll be no enforcement for the least of these in terms of public education. So public education will end up dwindling for many people and dying on the vine. And it is our nation that suffers. It's stupid. It's stupid to want to break the Department of Education.
I, I agree with you. And, you know, I had on Randy Weingarten last week to talk about it because we knew this was coming from the teachers union. And, you know, she went through in great detail the impact it's going to have on disabled students and also allowing the red states to have the money to do what they want. Some might act in good faith, but others might end just having programming propaganda for their students, like indoctrination of right-wing things, religious talks in school. I mean, it's very challenging. Last thing, and this touches on where we're going as a nation. You know, the Trump regime, as I call it, a regime, not an administration, they're detaining Mahmoud Khalil simply for his political views. There's no crimes. He's not committed any crime. He's a green card holder. Yesterday, we learned a postdoctoral student was arrested, and they're trying to take away his student visa because his wife is Palestinian American. She's a U.S. citizen, but they allege that they might have views that are inconsistent with U.S. foreign policy. And when you get into these thought crimes in a way, and that's what they are, my concern is that first, these are fundamentally wrong what they're doing. My concern it goes beyond Mahmoud Khalil, green card holder, and that they start applying this to U.S. citizens, and who's going to stand up for us then? So are you concerned that the Trump administration is going to get to the point of punishing U.S. citizens for expressing views inconsistent with the regime?
Across many enterprises, the Trump regime, the Trump Musk regime,
Right.
is stifling First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of the press. They have embarked upon a campaign of fear and intimidation and terror, threatening people and showing others by treating people, depriving them of their liberty under false pretenses for speaking up, for exercising their First Amendment right. Um, they're doing that not just for people who are in this country legally from other countries, but they're here legally. They're threatening them. They are punishing them. Uh, they're doing the same thing to government employees. They're doing the same thing to uh, businesses that have federal contracts. They're intimidating them to either remain silent or to do the work of the dirty work of this administration. Uh, Nonprofits, law firms, cities, states, even foreign governments are being threatened and coerced by a bully to do what he wants them to do, or they're being punished for going against the views or positions of Trump and Musk. And so it's a reign of terror that is resulting in the deprivation of fundamental constitutional rights across the board in many different sectors of society. And yes, I'm worried about that. That's another example of how our basic rights are being taken away. And we can't let that happen. We must resist.
Absolutely, we must resist. And I don't read everything Trump posts, but I saw an article today about his post last night. If you do anything at a Tesla dealership that they deem wrong, that he's threatening to deport people, U.S. citizens, to El Salvador prisons, and you're like, this is something I don't even know if Putin would send you. He'd send you to Siberia, I guess, to a gulag. We're in a different place. So, well, Congressman, it's great chatting with you always. I know it's a difficult, challenging time for all of us, but it's great that we have an ally like you, an outspoken ally on this issue, and we're all in this together. So we have to stay united. We got to keep fighting together, uniting and fighting against the outside and the Trump regime going forward.
Yeah, we must, Dean, and I appreciate you. And I must close with how the images of the detainees who were spirited away to El Salvador and how they were led off the plane in such harsh and inhumane ways must have been, they must have seen, those detainees must have seen something happen physically to one of them in order for them all to be frightened and fearful as they got off the plane and as they had their heads and beards shaved against their will, and how they were seated. I mean, being in prison in El Salvador and our country putting detainees in these brutal and harsh and inhumane conditions is shocking, is shockingly inhumane. And so our country, this is what we have become after electing this dictator into office. We cannot allow it to happen.
I agree. And that's why we have to continue to fight back every single day. Thank you, Congressman. Have a good weekend, Mike.